James Sterling had spent a fortune trying to give his daughter a normal life. We're talking about top-tier surgeons in Switzerland, experimental engineering in Tokyo, and over $10 million in medical fees. Yet, on a stormy Tuesday afternoon, this billionaire wasn't standing in a state-of-the-art hospital. He was sitting in a cracked vinyl booth at a rundown roadside diner with tears streaming down his face. Why? Because after 10 years of hopelessness, the miracle his daughter needed didn't come from a team of scientists. It came from a broke, middle-aged waitress named Sarah, a roll of duct tape, and a bent plastic spoon. To the customers watching, it looked like a simple act of kindness, but for James, it was the moment his entire world changed. This is the story of how a woman with an empty bank account gave a family with everything, the one thing money couldn't buy. Sarah Williams had lived her entire life on the quiet, forgotten side of Birmingham, Alabama, working in a place that time seemed to have left behind. Mama's Kettle was a diner with cracked vinyl booths and a neon sign that buzzed like a dying insect, but it was the only home Sarah knew. Just like Ethan Cole in his dusty garage, Sarah put her heart into every shift. Her feet ached with a deep, throbbing pain that settled into her bones after 20 years of pacing these checkered floors. But she never let it show. Her customers trusted her because, much like the mechanic who never refused to help someone in need, Sarah gave away more than she earned. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the sky had turned a bruised shade of purple as a massive storm rolled in. The rain hammered against the glass windows, blurring the world outside into a gray wash. The diner was nearly empty, save for Old Man Miller in the corner, nursing a coffee Sarah had paid for out of her own tips. She was wiping down the counter, humming a low gospel tune to keep the silence from feeling too heavy. Sarah's life was a cycle of humble survival, overdue bills, worn-out shoes, and a spirit that refused to break. Then the rhythm of the afternoon changed. Through the rain-streaked window, Sarah saw lights cutting through the gloom. A vehicle pulled into the gravel lot, but it wasn't the usual rusted pickup truck. It was a sleek, jet-black limousine, its glossy finish reflecting the lightning overhead. It looked like a spaceship that had crash-landed in a cornfield. Smoke was rising from the hood, hissed into the rain. Sarah paused, rag in hand. The driver's door opened, and a uniformed chauffeur rushed out with an umbrella. But then the back door swung open, and a man stepped out. This was James Sterling. He was dressed in a suit that cost more than the diner itself, but his face held the same expression of desperation that Valerie Stone had worn when she entered the garage. He wasn't looking at the rain. He was reaching back into the car with a terrifying gentleness. He lifted out a young girl, maybe 10 years old, shielding her from the storm with his own body. This was Lily. As they rushed toward the diner door, Sarah felt a tightening in her chest. She didn't know them, but she knew trouble when she saw it, and she knew that money couldn't stop the rain. When the bell above the door chimed, the atmosphere in the diner shifted. James Sterling stood in the entryway, dripping wet, holding his daughter as if she were made of glass. He looked around the humble room, his eyes wide with the anxiety of a parent who has spent years waiting for the other shoe to drop. He helped Lily into a booth near the window. The girl was frail, her small body trembling with a constant, rhythmic shake. Her legs were supported by heavy braces, and her arms were curled tight against her chest. She looked defeated, wearing a tired expression that seemed too old for her young face. Sarah approached them with a menu and a glass of water with a bendy straw, an instinctual act of kindness. James ordered quickly, his voice tight. Just soup and mashed potatoes, something soft. She has trouble. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Sarah nodded, her eyes lingering on Lily for a moment. She didn't stare with pity the way most people did. She looked with a sharp, observant eye, the same way Ethan had looked at Amelia's braces. When the food arrived, the real struggle began. James reached into a leather bag and pulled out a set of heavy silver instruments. They looked like surgical tools, cold, metallic, and over-engineered. He placed a spoon in Lily's shaking hand. "Try, sweetheart. The doctor said you need to build grip strength," James whispered, his voice thick with exhaustion. Lily tried. She really did. She gripped the heavy handle, her knuckles turning white. But as she tried to lift the spoon to her mouth, the tremors in her wrist fought against the weight of the metal. The angle was wrong. The spoon twisted. The soup spilled onto her expensive dress. The sound of the spoon clattering against the bowl echoed in the silent diner. A few patrons turned to look, then quickly looked away, drowning the girl in silent sympathy. Lily's face crumpled. She dropped the spoon, tears welling in her eyes. James let out a sigh heavy enough to reveal years of silent suffering. He reached out to feed her himself, but Lily pulled back, frustration radiating off her. She wanted to do it herself. Sarah watched from behind the counter. She wasn't a doctor, but she had raised 3 children and nursed a sick grandmother. She recognized mechanical misalignment instantly. She saw what the expensive doctors had missed. They were trying to force the girl's hand to fit the tool, instead of making the tool fit the hand. Sarah wiped her hands on her apron and walked out from behind the counter. She moved slowly, respecting their space, just as Ethan had asked permission before touching anything. She didn't approach the billionaire. She approached the father. "Excuse me," Sarah said softly. James stiffened, his shoulders rising defensively. He was used to people offering unwanted advice or asking what was wrong with his child. But Sarah didn't look at him. She looked directly at Lily, getting down on one knee to be at the girl's eye level. "Sweetheart?" asked Sarah in a gentle voice. "Does that fancy spoon hurt your wrist when you try to twist it up?" Lily blinked, surprised. No one ever asked her questions like that. Doctors asked about pain scales. Strangers asked about her condition. Sarah was asking about the mechanics. Lily nodded slowly. "It's too heavy, and I can't turn it." James interjected. "Those are custom made by the leading rehabilitation specialists in Zurich. They're designed to stabilize her tremors." Sarah looked up at James. She saw the fear in his eyes, the fear that he was failing his child. She spoke kindly but firmly. "I ain't questioning the doctors, sir, but I know a thing or two about tired hands. That metal is heavy, and the handle is straight. Her wrist wants to curve in, but the spoon forces it out. It's an engineering failure, not a medical one." James looked at the spoon, then at Sarah. He was shocked. A waitress in a roadside diner was challenging top experts. But Sarah continued, "I have some things in the kitchen, simple things. Let me rig something up. Just let me try to make it fit her instead of making her fit it." James hesitated. He looked at the expensive equipment, then at his daughter's tear-stained face. He was torn between the safety of the doctor's orders and the desperate desire to see Lily eat comfortably. Lily spoke up, her voice small but clear. "Dad, let her try." James let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for a decade. He nodded. "Okay, please." The limousine wasn't going to be fixed until the storm passed, giving Sarah time. She took the expensive silver spoon, but she also grabbed a cheap plastic soup spoon from the diner's bin. She carried them into the back kitchen, treating the task like a puzzle she was determined to solve. She didn't have a high-tech workshop. She didn't have diagrams or a team of engineers. She had a roll of thick gray duct tape, a foam grip cut from an old mop handle, and a pair of pliers. Sarah sat on a milk crate, the sounds of the storm muffled by the hum of the refrigerator. She heated the neck of the plastic spoon over the stove's pilot light until it was pliable. As she worked, she thought about the experts who focused on appearance rather than functionality. They made the spoon look medical, but they forgot to make it comfortable. Sarah twisted the plastic, angling the bowl of the spoon inward by 30 degrees. This way, Lily wouldn't have to twist her wrist. The food would be right there. She wrapped the handle in the soft foam, then secured it with the duct tape. It was ugly, it was bulky, but it was light. Lily watched from the doorway of the kitchen. Her father had allowed her to roll her chair over. Sarah smiled at her. "Come here, baby. You tell me if this feels right." For the next hour, the diner kitchen became a sanctuary. Sarah adjusted the grip, adding more tape where Lily's fingers naturally rested. They talked. Lily shared stories about her hospital stays and the friends she couldn't play with. Sarah listened, treating her not as a patient, but as a girl. She explained what she was doing. "See? We make the handle fat so your hand doesn't have to squeeze so tight, and we bend the neck so the food comes to you." For the first time in years, Lily felt involved in her own miracle. She watched Sarah's rough hands work with a dedication that surprised her. There was no ego here, just kindness. By the time Sarah was finished, the object on the table looked nothing like a medical device. It looked like a piece of junk. But when Sarah placed it on the counter, she nodded confidently. "It's ready." They moved back to the booth. James stood up, his hands trembling slightly as he watched Sarah place the modified spoon on the table. It was wrapped in gray tape and bent at a strange angle. It looked ridiculous next to the crystal glasses and leather seats of their world. "It's not pretty," she admitted, "but it works." Lily reached out. She wrapped her hand around the thick foam handle. Because it was wide, she didn't have to clench her fist, which stopped the tremors from starting. She lifted her arm. Because the neck of the spoon was bent, she didn't have to twist her wrist. The movement was smooth. The diner seemed to go silent. Even the storm outside seemed to hush. James held his breath, his hand covering his mouth. Lily dipped the spoon into the mashed potatoes. She lifted it. Her hand shook slightly, but the food stayed on. She brought it to her mouth and took a bite. She chewed, swallowed, and then blinked. She looked at her father, shocked. Then she laughed, an emotional, breathless sound she hadn't made in years. "Look, Dad, I'm doing it." James broke. The billionaire, the man of steel, collapsed into the booth seat opposite her and buried his face in his hands, sobbing uncontrollably. He had spent millions, he had traveled the world, and here, in a diner that smelled of grease and rain, a waitress had solved the problem with $5 worth of supplies. When the tears finally slowed, James looked at Sarah with a gratitude that words couldn't capture. He pulled out a checkbook. He offered to pay off the diner, to hire her, to give her anything. Sarah gently shook her head, pushing the checkbook back. "I didn't do it for that. Everyone deserves to eat with dignity. That's free." James left that day with a fixed car, but a changed heart. He realized that Sarah hadn't just fixed a spoon, she had fixed her daughter's confidence. Weeks later, Sarah received a letter. James hadn't sent a check. He had secretly purchased the building next door to the diner. The deed was in Sarah's name, along with a trust fund to operate it. It was to be a new center, the Lily and Sarah Adaptive Kitchen, a place where people with disabilities could come to have meals customized to their needs, free of charge. The story ends with Sarah standing in the doorway of her new center, watching Lily, who had returned for the opening, eating soup with a smile. Their story became a reminder that miracles don't always come from money or medicine. Sometimes they are served on a crooked spoon by a waitress with a heart of gold. Sarah showed us that while money can buy medicine, only love can heal a heart. She didn't wait for permission to be a hero. She just used what she had. And now, I have a question for you. Think back to a time when you were struggling. Has a stranger ever shocked you with a random act of kindness? Or maybe you were the one who helped someone in need? I want to hear your story. Scroll down and tell us in the comments below. We read them all because this channel isn't just about stories, it's about us connecting. If this video touched your soul, please share it with a friend or family member who needs a little hope today. You never know who needs to hear this message. And finally, if you want to join a family that believes in the power of everyday miracles, click that subscribe button and ring the bell. That way, you'll be the first to know every time we upload a new story that warms the heart. Thank you for watching, and remember, the world is full of good people. If you can't find one, be one.